Welcome to a captivating tale of chance, contracts, and unexpected love. In the heart of New York, a CEO's world collides with a fiery stranger, sparking a journey that defies all plans. Will a fake marriage become something real, or will secrets tear them apart? Drop a comment with your city to let us know where you're tuning in from, and hit that subscribe button to never miss a twist. Stick around. What happens when a single kiss changes everything? You won't believe how this story unfolds. The autumn wind sliced through Manhattan's concrete canyons, carrying the sharp scent of roasted chestnuts and diesel. Henry Caldwell, a 38-year-old real estate titan, strode down Fifth Avenue with the precision of a metronome. His tailored charcoal suit hugged his broad shoulders, and his polished loafers clicked against the pavement, a rhythm as unrelenting as his ambition. At the helm of an empire of gleaming skyscrapers and luxury condominiums, Henry was a man who owned the skyline, but had no time for the chaos of human connection. His world was one of contracts, profits, and control, until a single clause in his grandfather's will shattered that order. Marry within a year, or lose the Caldwell fortune. The ultimatum gnawed at him like a persistent ache. Marriage to Henry was a liability, a distraction from the empire he'd built brick by brick. Love? A myth peddled by poets and fools. Yet the ticking clock of his inheritance forced his hand, and this morning, as he hurried to a pivotal meeting with investors, the weight of it pressed harder than ever. His phone buzzed incessantly, texts from his mother, Lillian, urging him to meet yet another suitable heiress. He silenced it, jaw tight, and quickened his pace. The meeting was his focus. Everything else could wait. The streets pulsed with life. Taxis honked, pedestrians wove through each other, and street vendors hawked their wares. Henry barely noticed, his mind already in the boardroom, rehearsing figures and strategies. He rounded a corner near Rockefeller Center, his briefcase swinging, when crash. He collided with someone hard. Papers fluttered like startled birds, scattering across the sidewalk. A woman's voice, sharp and unyielding, cut through the city's din. "Watch where you're going, you idiot!" Henry froze, startled not by the impact, but by the audacity. He glanced down to see a woman kneeling, gathering her papers with frantic precision. She was striking. Porcelain skin, golden hair spilling over her shoulders, and green eyes that blazed with indignation. Her navy blazer was slightly frayed at the cuffs, hinting at a life less gilded than his own. But her posture radiated defiance. "Do you always barrel through people like that?" she snapped, snatching a crumpled sheet from under a passerby's shoe. For a moment, Henry was speechless, a rarity for a man who commanded rooms with a single glance. Her fire, so unpolished and raw, was unlike the calculated deference he was used to. He should have walked away. The meeting was minutes away, and investors didn't tolerate tardiness. But something about her held him there, a spark he couldn't name. "I'm sorry," he said, the words clipped but genuine. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a sleek business card, and dropped it beside her. "Send me the cost of any damages." Her laugh was short, incredulous. "Damages? You think a card fixes this?" She stood, clutching her papers, and waved the card mockingly. "What kind of jerk leaves a business card and runs? Unbelievable." Her voice carried over the crowd, unapologetic, and Henry felt an unfamiliar tug at the corner of his mouth, a smile, faint but real. He hadn't smiled like that in years. "I'm late," he said, already turning. "Call if you need anything." He strode off, her words trailing behind him like a comet's tail. "Rude. Just keep running, Mr. Fancy Suit." The crowd swallowed her voice, but it echoed in his mind, a defiant melody against the city's hum. As he slipped into the glass tower for his meeting, Henry couldn't shake the image of her. Those fierce eyes, that unfiltered nerve. For the first time in ages, he felt something stir, a curiosity he hadn't allowed himself, since he'd buried his heart under ambition. The meeting went flawlessly, as always. Henry presented projections with surgical precision, securing a $200 million deal for a new midtown development. His team applauded, but his thoughts drifted back to the sidewalk, to the woman who dared to call him out. He didn't even know her name, yet her voice lingered, a challenge to his carefully curated world. Shaking it off, he returned to his office, a sleek fortress of glass and steel atop one of his towers. His assistant, a nervous young man who'd resigned the week before, had left a backlog of chaos. A new assistant was starting tomorrow, and Henry could only hope they'd survive his relentless pace. That night, in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Henry stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of bourbon in hand. The city glittered below, a testament to his success, but it felt hollow. His grandfather's will loomed like a storm cloud. Marriage wasn't just a formality, it was a cage, threatening to bind him to someone who'd demand more than he could give. He'd built his life on control, on never needing anyone, yet the will forced him to confront a truth he'd long avoided. No amount of wealth could buy his way out of this. As he sipped his drink, his mind wandered to the woman on the street. Her anger, her authenticity. It was a stark contrast to the polished, predictable world he inhabited. He set the glass down, annoyed with himself. She was a stranger, a fleeting moment. Tomorrow he'd bury himself in work, as always, and forget her. But as he lay in bed, the city's lights casting shadows across his ceiling, her voice echoed again. Unbelievable! And for reasons he couldn't fathom, Henry Caldwell fell asleep with a faint smile, unaware that fate had already set a new course in motion. The morning sun sliced through the glass walls of Henry Caldwell's office, bathing the room in a sterile glow. At 38, he was a man who thrived on order. His desk, a fortress of precision, documents aligned, pens parallel, not a speck of dust daring to settle. Yesterday's collision on Fifth Avenue lingered in his mind like an uninvited guest, the woman's fiery rebuke. What kind of jerk leaves a card and runs, replaying at odd moments? Henry dismissed it as a distraction, a fleeting anomaly. He had bigger battles to fight. A new midtown project, a backlog of contracts, and the relentless pressure of his grandfather's will, demanding he marry within a year to secure the Caldwell legacy. Today, his focus was on survival. His new assistant started this morning, and after the last one's abrupt exit, Henry needed someone who could keep up. He sipped his black coffee, scanning emails, when a knock broke his rhythm. "Come in," he called, voice clipped. The door swung open, and there she was, Willow Harper, the woman from the sidewalk. Her golden hair was pulled into a neat bun, her navy blazer pressed but still faintly worn at the edges. Her green eyes widened in recognition, and before she could stop herself, she blurted, "Oh no, the card-dropping jerk." The words hung in the air, sharp and unguarded, before her hand flew to her mouth, cheeks flushing. "I mean, Mr. Caldwell, I'm so sorry. I'm Willow Harper, your new assistant." Henry's lips twitched, a rare flicker of amusement crossing his stoic features. Her audacity, so raw and unfiltered, was a stark contrast to the polished deference he was used to. "Miss Harper," he said, leaning back in his chair, "let's hope your organizational skills are as sharp as your tongue." Willow straightened, her embarrassment giving way to resolve. "They are, sir. I can handle whatever you throw at me." Her tone was firm, a challenge wrapped in professionalism, and Henry felt that same tug of curiosity from the street. He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit. We have work to do." The morning unfolded in a whirlwind. Willow dove into the chaos left by her predecessor, sorting through a tangle of missed deadlines and unsent contracts. Henry watched her work, impressed by her efficiency. She anticipated his needs, handing him a revised proposal before he asked, flagging errors in a financial report with surgical precision. By noon, she'd restructured his schedule, carving out time for a critical investor call. "You're fast," Henry remarked, glancing up from a contract. Willow shrugged, a faint smile playing on her lips. "I've had to be. Life doesn't wait." Her words carried a weight Henry didn't probe, but they stirred something in him, a recognition of resilience he rarely saw in his world of privilege. As days turned to weeks, their dynamic settled into a rhythm, intense and oddly exhilarating. Willow's sharp wit kept Henry on his toes. She didn't cower when he barked orders or questioned her decisions. During a heated debate over a zoning dispute, she leaned across his desk, pointing at a map. "You're missing the community impact here. If you push this through without concessions, you'll alienate half the neighborhood." Henry raised an eyebrow, unused to being challenged. "And you think you know my business better than I do?" Willow held his gaze. "I know people, Mr. Caldwell. You can't build empires without them." Her conviction silenced him, and for the first time he conceded, adjusting the plan. She'd won, and he respected her for it. Late-night work sessions became their norm, the office glowing under fluorescent lights as they pored over blueprints and spreadsheets. Takeout containers littered the conference table. Sushi one night, Thai the next. In these quiet hours, barriers softened. Once, passing a financial model, their fingers brushed, sending a jolt through Henry. He pulled back, clearing his throat, and Willow busied herself with a file, her cheeks pink. Another night, as rain lashed the windows, she caught him staring. "What?" she asked, half laughing. "Do I have soy sauce on my face?" Henry shook his head, a rare softness in his voice. "No, you just surprised me." The admission hung between them, unspoken tension simmering. Henry's personal life, however, offered no such warmth. Lillian's calls grew incessant, each one a reminder of the marriage deadline. "I've arranged a dinner with Charlotte Wentworth," she announced one evening. "She is perfect for you." Henry's jaw tightened. The thought of another vapid socialite made his skin crawl. He ended the call abruptly, his gaze drifting to Willow, who was organizing files across the room. Her presence, so vibrant and real, made the idea of a forced match unbearable. He pushed the thought away. Willow was his assistant, nothing more. Yet the memory of her laughter, her defiance, clung to him like a shadow. One evening, after a grueling negotiation, Willow slumped into a chair, kicking off her heels. "You run this place like a war zone," she teased, rubbing her neck. Henry loosened his tie, a rare moment of ease. "And you thrive in it. Why is that?" She hesitated, her gaze distant. "I've had to fight for everything. My mom's sick, and every penny goes to her care. This job, it's my lifeline." Her vulnerability struck him, a glimpse into a life shaped by struggle, not silver spoons. He wanted to ask more, but the moment passed, and she stood, gathering her things. "See you tomorrow, boss," she said, flashing a tired smile. As the door closed, Henry sat alone, the silence heavy with questions he wasn't ready to answer. The fluorescent glow of Henry Caldwell's office cast long shadows as Willow Harper slipped out, her tired smile lingering in the air like a half-forgotten melody. Henry sat alone, the silence of the late hour pressing against him. Her words from earlier, about fighting for her sick mother, about this job being her lifeline, had cracked the armor he wore so effortlessly. For weeks, their late-night work sessions had blurred the line between boss and confidant. Each shared glance and accidental touch, tightening a thread he refused to name. But the weight of his grandfather's will, demanding he marry within months to secure the Caldwell fortune, loomed larger than ever. Henry had no intention of surrendering to love, a concept he dismissed as a weakness. Yet the thought of losing his legacy was intolerable. Lillian, his mother, was relentless. Her latest voicemail, left that morning dripped with expectation. "Henry, you're meeting Victoria Langston tomorrow. She's from an excellent family. Don't disappoint me." The name soured his mood. Victoria, like the others, would be a polished pawn in a game of social chess, offering nothing but rehearsed smiles and shallow ambition. During a tense lunch at a midtown bistro, Lillian pressed harder, her fork poised over a salad. "You're running out of time, Henry. The will is clear." Frustration boiled over, and he snapped, "I already have a fiancée, Mother. You'll meet her soon." The lie slipped out, sharp and impulsive, silencing Lillian's protests. Her eyes narrowed, but she nodded, expectant. Henry left the restaurant, his pulse racing. He'd bought himself time, but now he needed a plan. That evening, Henry summoned Willow to his office, the city skyline glittering beyond the glass. She arrived, her navy blazer swapped for a simple sweater, her green eyes curious but guarded. He slid a manila folder across the desk, his voice steady, all business. "I have a proposition, Miss Harper. I need you to pose as my fiancée and marry me for 1 year. In return, I'll cover your mother's medical bills, secure a new apartment, and ensure you want for nothing." Willow froze, her breath catching. The contract inside the folder outlined it all: a temporary marriage, a public charade, and a clean exit with a substantial payout. "You're serious?" she asked, her voice low, almost a whisper. Henry nodded, his gaze unwavering. "It's a business deal. No emotions, no complications." Willow's fingers trembled as she scanned the document. Her mother's hospital bills were a crushing weight, each one a reminder of the run-down Brooklyn flat they shared. The sleepless nights spent worrying. This offer was a lifeline, a chance to give her mother comfort. But the cost, tying herself to a man like Henry, cold and calculating, felt like a betrayal of her pride. "Why me?" she demanded, meeting his eyes. "You could hire an actress, someone who does this for a living." Henry leaned forward, his tone measured. "Because you're believable. You're smart, capable, and people respect you. I trust you to pull this off." The word trust hung between them, heavy with meaning neither acknowledged. She pushed the folder back, crossing her arms. "This is insane, Henry. You're asking me to lie to the world, to your family." Her voice wavered, but her resolve held. "What happens when it's over? I just walk away, pretending none of it mattered." Henry's jaw tightened. "You walk away with your life transformed. No strings attached. I've ensured the contract is ironclad." Willow looked away, her mind racing. The memory of her mother's frail hand in hers, the beeping of hospital monitors, tipped the scales. With a shaky breath, she picked up the pen and signed, her signature a reluctant vow. "1 year," she said, voice firm. "Don't expect me to like it." The next weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Henry's team orchestrated the narrative, a whirlwind romance, a love story for the press. Willow moved into a guest suite in his penthouse, a space of sleek marble and cold elegance that felt worlds away from her reality. They rehearsed their roles, learning each other's habits, practicing public affection. During one session, Henry adjusted her posture for a mock photo, his hand lingering on her shoulder. The air crackled and Willow stepped back, flustered. "We don't need to overdo it," she muttered. Henry's eyes flickered with something unreadable before he nodded. "Fine. Just be convincing." Lillian's first meeting with Willow was a test. At a private dinner in the Caldwell estate, she scrutinized Willow, her questions probing but polite. "How did you two meet?" she asked, sipping her wine. Willow, prepared, smiled. "He ran into me, literally, on Fifth Avenue, dropped his card and kept going. I thought he was insufferable." The truth, laced with charm, drew a laugh from Lillian. Henry, watching, felt a strange pride. Willow was flawless, her authenticity disarming even his skeptical mother. As they left, Lillian pulled him aside. "She's different, Henry. Don't let her slip away." Her words, meant as encouragement, stirred unease. This was a contract, nothing more. Yet cracks appeared in Henry's resolve. One night, reviewing their engagement announcement, Willow laughed at a typo, her warmth filling the sterile penthouse. Henry caught himself staring, her presence a quiet rebellion against his controlled world. The deadline for his grandfather's will loomed, but it was Willow, her strength, her defiance, that kept him awake, wondering if he'd miscalculated the cost of this charade. The Manhattan skyline shimmered like a crown of stars, its reflection dancing on the glass walls of Henry Caldwell's skyscraper, where the grandest wedding of the season was about to unfold. Henry, impeccable in a tailored tuxedo, stood at the altar, his pulse steady, but his mind unsettled. The contract with Willow Harper, signed weeks ago to secure his inheritance through a year-long fake marriage, had seemed foolproof, a transaction devoid of emotional risk. Yet, as he watched her navigate his world with grace and fire, doubts crept in. Their rehearsed moments of affection, the shared glances during late-night planning, had stirred something he couldn't name. Tonight, the charade would reach its peak, and Henry felt the weight of it like a storm gathering on the horizon. Willow descended the aisle, a vision in ivory silk that hugged her frame, her golden hair cascading in soft waves. The crowd, New York's elite, from Wall Street moguls to society matrons, murmured in awe, but her green eyes locked onto Henry's, a mix of determination and unease. The contract demanded perfection, and she was playing her part flawlessly. Lillian, seated in the front row, beamed, convinced by their carefully crafted love story. Henry's chest tightened. Willow's performance was too real, her presence too vivid against the sterile backdrop of his life. The ceremony, choreographed to the last detail, unfolded smoothly. Vows recited, rings exchanged. Then came the moment Henry had insisted on during their rehearsals: the kiss. "It has to look real," he'd told her, his tone clinical. "No one can doubt us." Willow had nodded, her jaw tight. But now, as the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the air between them crackled. Henry stepped closer, his hand grazing her waist. Her breath hitched, barely audible. He leaned in, and their lips met, a soft, deliberate press that was meant to be brief. But the world tilted. The kiss deepened, electric, a current that surged through them both, obliterating the script. Willow's hand curled against his chest, and Henry's fingers tightened on her, lost in a warmth he hadn't anticipated. The crowd erupted in applause, snapping them back. They pulled apart, breathless. Her cheeks flushed, his eyes darkened with something unspoken. For a moment, the contract felt like a lie. Not because they'd failed, but because this felt too true. The reception swirled around them, a blur of champagne flutes and congratulations. Willow moved through it with practiced ease, charming guests with anecdotes about their courtship. Henry watched her, a glass of scotch untouched in his hand. She was radiant, her laughter genuine as she deflected a senator's probing question about their future. But when their eyes met across the room, the memory of the kiss hung heavy, a silent question neither dared to voice. He approached her during a lull, his voice low. "You're doing well?" "Almost too well." Willow's smile was wry. "Just following the contract, Mr. Caldwell." The formality stung, a reminder of the boundaries they'd set. Life in Henry's penthouse began, a delicate dance of proximity and pretense. Willow's suite, though luxurious, felt like a gilded cage, its marble floors and minimalist decor a far cry from her cluttered Brooklyn flat. They maintained the facade in public, hand-holding at galas, staged photos for the press. But in private, they tiptoed around the growing tension. Mornings found them sharing coffee, Willow teasing Henry about his obsession with black espresso. "Do you ever try anything new?" she asked, stirring sugar into her cup. He smirked. "New is overrated. Control is better." Her laugh, bright and unguarded, warmed the sterile space, and Henry caught himself lingering at the counter longer than necessary. Small gestures eroded their defenses. One evening, Henry found a sketch Willow had left on the dining table. A cityscape, vibrant and chaotic, drawn with startling skill. He bought her a leather-bound sketchbook, leaving it on her desk with a note. "Keep drawing." When she thanked him, her fingers brushing his as she took the book, the air thickened, and they both looked away. Another night, stranded by a sudden storm, they shared a bottle of wine on the penthouse balcony, the city blurred by rain. "What would you be doing if you weren't here?" Henry asked, his voice softer than usual. Willow gazed at the horizon. "Probably sketching in some dive bar, pretending I'm not worried about Mom's next hospital bill." Her honesty disarmed him, and he almost reached for her hand before stopping himself. The public adored them. Tabloids splashed their photos across covers, calling them New York's power couple. Lillian, fully convinced, began planning family dinners. Her warmth toward Willow, a stark contrast to Henry's calculated distance. But the kiss haunted them, a ghost that lingered in every shared space. One night, reviewing a press release, Willow leaned close to point out a detail, her shoulder brushing his. The contact sent a jolt through Henry, and he stood abruptly. "We should call it a night," he said, his voice rough. Willow nodded, her expression unreadable, but as she left, her absence left the room colder. The contract, once a clear map, now felt like a labyrinth. Henry lay awake, the city's hum a faint pulse beyond his window. Willow was more than an employee, more than a partner in this ruse. Her strength, her spark, had slipped past his walls, and the realization terrified him. With months left in their agreement, he wondered if he could keep his heart locked away, or if Willow had already claimed it without trying. The penthouse was a fortress of silence, its sleek surfaces reflecting the tension that had settled between Henry Caldwell and Willow Harper. Weeks had passed since their wedding kiss, a moment that had shattered the boundaries of their contractual marriage and left them teetering on the edge of something neither dared name. In public, they were the perfect couple, Henry's arm around Willow at charity galas, her laughter charming the city's elite. But in private, the unspoken weight of that kiss hung like a storm cloud, their interactions a careful dance around the truth. The contract, with its ticking clock, loomed closer to its end, and Henry found himself dreading the day Willow would walk away, her role complete. Willow, too, was unraveling. The penthouse, with its cold elegance, felt less like a cage and more like a mirror, reflecting her growing feelings for Henry. His small gestures, the sketchbook he'd gifted her, the way he listened when she spoke of her mother's illness, had chipped away at her resolve. Yet the contract was clear. This was a transaction, not a love story. She buried her emotions in work, sketching late into the night to quiet the ache in her chest. One evening, as she traced the city's skyline on her pad, Henry appeared in the doorway. His tie loosened, a rare vulnerability in his posture. "You're up late," he said, his voice low. Willow shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "Couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind." He lingered, as if wanting to say more, but left without another word. The distance between them palpable. The facade held until Lillian, Henry's mother, unwittingly shattered it. She'd grown fond of Willow, inviting her to tea and sharing stories of the Caldwell family's history. One afternoon, while Henry was at a meeting, Lillian visited the penthouse to drop off a family heirloom, a sapphire brooch, for Willow to wear at an upcoming event. Finding the office empty, she tidied Henry's desk, a habit from his childhood. Beneath a stack of contracts, She uncovered a document that stopped her cold. The agreement between Henry and Willow, detailing their fake marriage, the financial terms, and the one-year expiration. Lillian's hands trembled as she read, her heart sinking. This wasn't love. It was a transaction, and the betrayal cut deep. Not for herself, but for Willow, whom she'd come to adore. That evening, Lillian confronted Henry in his office, the city's lights casting stark shadows across the room. She held the contract, her eyes blazing with disappointment. "How could you, Henry?" she demanded, her voice steady, but laced with pain. "Willow deserves better than to be treated like a business deal." Henry froze, his carefully constructed world cracking. "It's not what you think," he began, but Lillian cut him off. "Don't lie to me. I see how you look at her, Henry. You love her, and she loves you. Why are you hiding behind this paper?" Her words struck like a blade, exposing a truth he'd buried beneath layers of control. He loved Willow, not as a partner in a scheme, but as the woman who'd brought warmth to his sterile life. The realization was terrifying, a leap into vulnerability he'd spent years avoiding. Lillian softened, placing a hand on his arm. "You're my son, and I know you're scared. But love isn't a weakness. It's the only thing worth risking everything for. Don't let her go, Henry. Not because of fear." She left the contract on his desk, its pages a silent accusation, and walked out. Henry sank into his chair, the city's hum a distant roar. He stared at the document, its terms now mocking the chaos in his heart. Willow wasn't just an employee or a means to an end. She was his home, a truth he could no longer deny. Determined to rewrite their story, Henry devised a plan. He reserved a private table at La Belle Étoile, the elegant restaurant where they'd collided on Fifth Avenue over a year ago. Its warm lights and soft jazz, a nod to their beginning. He spent the day arranging every detail: the menu, the music, the velvet box containing his grandmother's sapphire ring, a family heirloom symbolizing forever. That evening, he found Willow in the penthouse library, her sketchbook open to a drawing of two figures under a starry sky. "Dinner tonight," he said, his tone betraying a nervous edge. "Somewhere special. Be ready by 7. Willow raised an eyebrow, sensing his intensity, but nodded, her curiosity piqued. At La Belle Étoile, the candlelit table overlooked the bustling street where their paths had first crossed. Willow, in a simple emerald dress that made her eyes glow, listened as Henry spoke of their early days, his voice softer than she'd ever heard. "I was a fool that day, running into you," he said, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "But it was the best mistake I ever made." Willow laughed, but her heart raced as he grew serious. He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Willow, this started as a contract, but you've become everything to me. I love you, not for a year, but for always." He opened the box, revealing the ring. "Marry me for real. Be my wife, my partner, my home." Willow's breath caught, tears shimmering in her eyes. The weight of their journey, the lies, the kiss, the quiet moments, crashed over her. "Henry," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I love you too." She nodded, and he slid the ring onto her finger, the sapphire catching the light. She threw her arms around him, their embrace a promise beyond any contract. The restaurant's patrons clapped, but for Henry and Willow, the world was just the two of them, their hearts finally free. The candlelight at La Belle Étoile flickered as Willow Harper's arms wrapped around Henry Caldwell, her tears soaking into his suit. His proposal, raw and unguarded, had unraveled the contract that once defined them, replacing it with a promise of love that felt as vast as the New York skyline beyond. The sapphire ring on her finger, a Caldwell heirloom, gleamed with the weight of forever. As they pulled back, Willow's green eyes met Henry's, both shimmering with a shared vulnerability. The restaurant's applause faded, but the moment held them, a fragile bridge between their past deceptions and a future they dared to claim. Henry kissed her forehead, whispering, "Let's go home." Willow nodded, her heart full, knowing home was no longer just a place, but the life they would build together. 2 years later, the penthouse that once echoed with sterile silence now thrummed with life. The marble floors were softened with colorful rugs, and the walls bore framed sketches. Willow's artwork, capturing fleeting moments of their new reality. The greatest change, though, was the laughter of their twins, a boy named Ethan and a girl named Clara, whose giggles filled every corner. Ethan, with Henry's dark hair and piercing gaze, had a knack for stacking blocks into precarious towers, while Clara, her mother's golden curls framing bright green eyes, babbled with fierce determination. Henry and Willow, once bound by a cold agreement, had become a family, their love forged through trials and tempered by joy. On a crisp spring afternoon, they sprawled on a blanket in Central Park, the twins toddling on the grass under a canopy of cherry blossoms. Willow tossed a ball to Clara, who squealed and stumbled after it, while Henry steadied Ethan's latest block masterpiece. The city hummed around them, joggers, dog walkers, the distant wail of a siren, but here, in this pocket of green, time slowed. Willow leaned against Henry, her hand resting on his. "Remember when this park was just a view from your window?" she teased, her voice warm. Henry chuckled, his arm slipping around her. "Now it's our backyard. You've ruined me, Harper." His tone was light, but his eyes held a depth that spoke of gratitude. Their journey hadn't been without storms. The twins' arrival, though a miracle, had tested them. Sleepless nights, diaper disasters, and the chaos of new parenthood pushed Henry, ever the planner, to his limits. One midnight, when Clara's cries pierced the dark, he'd fumbled with a bottle, frustration mounting. Willow, exhausted, had taken his hand, her voice steady. "We're in this together, Henry, mess and all." Her words grounded him, and he'd learned to embrace the unpredictability, even finding joy in Clara's gummy smile as she finally settled. Willow, too, had faced doubts, wondering if she could balance motherhood with her dreams. Henry, noticing her sketchbook gathering dust, converted a spare room into a studio, surprising her with easels and paints. "You're still you," he'd said, kissing her. "Don't stop creating." Lillian, now a doting grandmother, was a constant presence. She arrived that afternoon, her silver hair catching the sunlight as she knelt to scoop up Ethan. "Look at this architect!" she exclaimed, admiring his blocks. Clara toddled over, demanding a hug, and Lillian obliged, her laughter rich. Over tea on the blanket, she shared stories of Henry's childhood, his stubborn streak, his love for building model cities. Willow listened, her heart swelling at the thought of their twins inheriting his fire. Lillian's eyes softened as she looked at them. "You've built something better than any skyscraper, Henry," she said. He squeezed Willow's hand, his voice low. "Couldn't have done it without her." The park moment was idyllic, but their life was no fairy tale. Henry's empire demanded long hours, and Willow's new gallery, showcasing her art, brought its pressures. They argued over missed dinners, over whose turn it was to handle a tantrum, but their fights ended in quiet apologies, often with one slipping into the other's arms as the twins slept. One evening, after a tense day, Willow found Henry in the nursery, rocking Clara. "I'm sorry," he murmured, not looking up. "I get lost in work sometimes." Willow knelt beside him, her hand on his knee. "And I get lost in my head, but we always find our way back." Their kiss, soft and certain, sealed the promise. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Ethan tugged at Willow's sleeve, pointing at a butterfly. Clara mimicked him, babbling, "Mama!" Henry grinned, lifting her onto his shoulders. "Dada's got you," he said, and Willow laughed, the sound mingling with the twins' glee. Passers-by smiled at the scene. A family, unpolished and real, woven together by choice. Willow turned to Henry, her voice soft. "Who'd have thought a clumsy collision would lead to this?" He kissed her, the twins giggling between them. "Best deal I ever made." Back home, as the twins slept, Henry and Willow stood on the balcony, the city glittering below. The contract that once bound them was a distant memory, replaced by a love that grew stronger with each challenge. They weren't perfect. Henry's need for control still surfaced, and Willow's fierce independence sometimes clashed. But they were whole. Together, they faced the world, their twins the heart of a legacy far greater than any fortune. The skyline stretched before them, a reminder of where they began. But it was the warmth of their embrace that defined where they were going. What a journey Henry and Willow have taken us on, from a chance collision to a love that built a family. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Did their story touch your heart? Or what would you have done in their shoes? Drop a comment below and share your feelings. Thank you for joining us in this tale of trust and transformation. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories that spark the soul. Until next time, keep believing in the power of unexpected love.